It always begins the same way, on some forgotten stretch of highway, under a bruised sky, when fatigue clings to your bones and the silence inside the car feels like it's pressing in. You glance in the rearview mirror, nothing but darkness. But then you feel it, that twinge, the ancient warning in your gut. You are not alone. For Sarah Whitmore, a 26-year-old freelance travel writer from Oregon, the road had always been her sanctuary. She'd driven cross-country 6 times in her beat-up Subaru, collecting stories from small-town diners and ghost towns left behind by time. But in the summer of 2017, while documenting folklore trails across the American Southwest, she encountered something that refused to be written away. She was deep in the Mojave Desert, just past midnight, her GPS flickering uselessly. No cell service. The only light came from her high beams, slicing through the dust. That's when she saw them. Figures, dozens of them, standing at the edges of the road. Not walking, not moving, just standing, featureless, shadow-like. Their heads turned in unison as her car passed. No faces, no eyes, just voids shaped like people. At first, she thought they were hallucinations, highway hypnosis, maybe exhaustion. But that night, she stopped at an old roadside motel near Amboy. Only 2 other cars in the lot. She locked the door, drew the blinds, turned off the lights, and tried to sleep. But then came the knocking. 3 slow knocks, not on the door, on the window. She froze. Her room was on the 2nd floor. The knocking came again. When she finally built up the courage to peek through the blinds, there was nothing. Just the empty parking lot bathed in flickering sodium light. But she didn't sleep a second after that. And in the morning, the motel manager, an elderly woman who looked like she hadn't slept in years, asked her if she had seen the Watchers. That word lodged itself in Sarah's mind like a shard of ice. Watchers. The manager refused to explain, but offered a chilling warning as Sarah packed her things. "Don't drive west at night," she whispered, eyes sunken. "They follow light and loneliness." Sarah tried to dismiss it, chalk it up to desert superstition, but things only escalated from there. In the days that followed, she began to feel constantly observed. No matter where she went, cafes, gas stations, hiking trails, there was always a shadow where there shouldn't be. Always a figure standing too still, too long. And every night, just after she turned off the lights in her hotel room, the knocking would begin. Windows, walls, ceiling. One motel clerk in Flagstaff refused to rent her a room after she described what was happening. "We've had others," he muttered, eyes darting to the security cameras. "We call them the shadow people. They follow travelers, especially the ones who drive alone." Desperate, Sarah posted her experience in an online travel forum. Within hours, she received dozens of private messages, stories from people who had encountered the same things. Desert roads, mountain passes, isolated rest stops, and always the same figures, the same feeling of being followed, even hunted. Some claimed they'd seen the figures even during daylight, though faint, like smoke caught in the corner of your eye. Sarah had stumbled into something ancient, something real. And it wasn't just happening to her. The desert wasn't done with Sarah Whitmore. Despite every instinct screaming at her to leave, she pushed forward, chasing answers now, not stories. Her next destination was Sedona, Arizona, a town pulsing with mystical energy and spiritual folklore. She hoped to find someone, anyone, who could make sense of what she was seeing, what she was feeling. But something else found her first. It was near dusk when she spotted him. A lone figure walking along Route 179, thumb raised high, backlit by the dying light. Tall, slender, dressed in what looked like a black hoodie and jeans. Something about him felt wrong. Not threatening, just off. Like a glitch in a movie frame. But Sarah, despite every story she had heard, and the unease coiled in her gut, pulled over. He got in without a word. The moment he closed the door, The temperature inside the car plummeted. Sarah glanced at him. His hood was still up, casting his face in shadow. But she could see his eyes, or what should have been eyes. They weren't reflecting light. They absorbed it. Empty and endless, like holes punched through space. She didn't say a word. Neither did he. They drove in silence for miles. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the world outside turned to ink. That's when Sarah noticed the shadows again, those same black figures pacing the edge of the road, now visible even in her peripheral vision. But they weren't outside the car. They were running alongside it. She pressed harder on the gas. 90, 100. Her heart slammed in her chest, like a warning bell. But the shadows kept pace, gliding without motion, flickering like candlelight, always just at the edge of her vision. And still, the hitchhiker said nothing. Finally, she couldn't take it. "Who are they?" she asked, gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. "What do they want?" He slowly turned his head toward her, his lips parted, barely moving. "They'd follow, the ones who see." That was all he said. Sarah looked at him again, really looked. His skin was pale, almost translucent. His presence felt hollow, like he was only half there. And when she blinked, he was gone. The passenger seat was empty. The seatbelt still clicked into place. The door still closed, but he had vanished. No trace, no sound, no explanation. Sarah slammed the brakes, her tires screeching against asphalt. She jumped out, scanning the desert. Nothing but silence and wind. And then her phone buzzed. A notification. One new voice message. She hadn't received a signal in over 2 hours. With shaking fingers, she pressed play. It was static, low, whispering static that crawled into her ears like insects. But beneath it, something else. A whisper, repeating the same phrase over and over. "You looked too long. You looked too long. You looked too long." She dropped the phone. When she looked back up, the shadows had stopped running. Now they were standing. Still, closer, watching, waiting. They were no longer content to follow from a distance. They were moving in.
Sarah didn't remember driving to the next town. All she knew was that at some point, the night had swallowed her whole, and the world outside the windshield had turned alien. Roads no longer looked familiar. Signs twisted in shapes she couldn't read. Every gas station she passed was dark, abandoned, like they had been deserted decades ago. She was no longer in Arizona. She was somewhere between. Sleep-deprived and unraveling, Sarah pulled into what looked like a service station just off a dirt road. The sign above flickered open in red neon, but the windows were blacked out. Inside, a single man stood behind the counter, motionless. He didn't acknowledge her when she entered, didn't even blink. "Is this still water?" she asked, her voice hollow, barely above a whisper. He turned his head with a jerk, like something from a broken animatronic display. Then he smiled, a too wide smile, unnatural, like he had forgotten how human expressions worked. "You're late," he said. "They're already here." The door slammed behind her. She spun, heart clawing its way up her throat. Outside the windows, shadows gathered again, not walking this time, just appearing, closer each second. Pressed up against the glass, faceless and fluid, like oil slicks shaped into men. "Who are they?" she asked the man. He didn't answer. Instead, he lifted a hand and held out a single item, a Polaroid photo. Sarah took it and her breath hitched. It was a picture of her, in her car, driving alone. And in the back seat, just barely visible behind her shoulder, was the hitchhiker. She dropped the photo. It fluttered to the floor. "How? When was this taken?" The man gave no reply, just stared with that same broken smile. And then the fluorescent lights above began to flicker violently. A deep hum vibrated through the building. The shadows outside didn't wait. They phased through the glass like it wasn't even there, sliding in, surrounding her, smothering the room with a presence that tasted like static and iron. Sarah turned to run, but the door was gone, replaced by a blank wall. She stumbled backward into the aisle, heart hammering against her ribs, her breath short and ragged. The shadows closed in, but just as they reached her, everything froze. The lights turned off, the hum vanished, and for a moment the silence was so complete it felt deafening. Then a single voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "She knows now." With a jolt, Sarah was back in her car, hands on the wheel, foot on the gas. It was dawn. Birds chirped. A truck passed her on the opposite side of the road. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal. The Polaroid was still on her passenger seat, and now there were scratches on her back window, thin, dragging lines that hadn't been there before. Sarah drove without stopping for 200 miles. No food, no rest. But the feeling didn't leave her. She was still being watched, not from outside the car, from inside her own shadow. And somewhere deep in her bones, she realized the truth. She hadn't escaped. She had crossed over. By the time Sarah reached Albuquerque, she was running on adrenaline and instinct. Her eyes were bloodshot, her voice raw from whispering to herself just to stay tethered to reality. But worst of all was the silence, not around her, within her. It was as if something had slipped in and was occupying the spaces between her thoughts. She checked into a nameless roadside inn where the clerk didn't ask questions. Her room smelled of mildew and old memories. She triple-locked the door, stuffed towels under the crack and turned every light on. And yet, when she looked in the bathroom mirror, her reflection lagged. Just a split-second delay, enough to confirm what she had begun to fear. The shadow people hadn't just followed her, they were inside her timeline now. That night, while scrolling through her old travel notes and trying to make sense of the last 48 hours, she came across something she didn't remember downloading, a file named Roots Docs, dated weeks before she left Oregon. Confused, she opened it. It wasn't a document, it was a map. Not a digital one, but an old scanned paper map, faded and yellowed, annotated with red ink. She recognized some places: Flagstaff, Sedona, Amboy. But others didn't exist. Places like Fells Hollow, Gate Zero, the Pale Valley. Even Google returned nothing. But the routes drawn on that map matched her exact path. The same towns, the same roads. Except one line was circled in thick red, the Corridor of Veils, travel only in dreams. Sarah's breath caught. Her journey hadn't been accidental. Someone or something had mapped it, as if her trip was a ritual, a path laid out long before she ever packed a bag. Suddenly her screen flickered, the lights in the room dimmed, and then the map updated itself. Before her eyes, a new red X appeared over Albuquerque. The moment it did, her phone buzzed, a text message from an unknown number, just 3 words. "They're almost through." She backed away from the laptop as the air grew thick, charged with invisible electricity. Her ears began to ring, vibrate, like something enormous was pressing against the walls of reality. Then the bathroom light shut off. Footsteps echoed inside, soft and bare. Sarah grabbed her keys and bolted through the hallway, past the desk clerk who didn't even flinch, out into the pale morning light. She jumped into her car and sped off, not caring where she went, just away. But when she looked in the rearview mirror, she saw herself again, sitting in the back seat. Only it wasn't her. The figure wore her face, but wrong, too still, too smooth, and its eyes, they were bottomless, just like the hitchhikers. She swerved off the road, the car spinning into the dust and gravel. When she scrambled out, there was no one inside. No second figure. Just her, and a fresh set of scratches etched into the back window. Not outside, inside. And this time, they formed words. 4 simple words. You brought them here. Sarah sank to her knees, sobbing into the morning sun. The map was gone from her laptop, but burned into her mind now, clear as day, was the route to the final place circled in red. Gate 0. The road to Gate 0 didn't appear on any GPS. No road signs pointed toward it. Yet Sarah drove as if something within her already knew the way. Every mile drew her deeper into a nowhere landscape. No towns, no cell towers, no birds, not even wind. Just flat desert and a strange haze that shimmered along the horizon like heat stroke made visible. When she finally arrived, she didn't need confirmation. She felt it. A rusted iron gate jutted out of the earth with no fence to accompany it. Just a freestanding relic in the middle of nothing, as if someone had drawn a door on the skin of the world. The metal was cold to the touch, colder than it should have been under the scorching sun. Etched into the arch above it were strange symbols, some looking like constellations, others like twisted versions of letters she almost recognized. In the center, carved in English, were 2 haunting words, "Welcome back." Sarah stepped through. At first, nothing happened, but after a few steps, the world tilted. The sky seemed to fold in on itself. Sounds became distant, muffled, like she was walking underwater. Shadows danced unnaturally around her feet, long and too slow, like they were being dragged by something unseen. And then she saw them. Hundreds of figures standing in perfect silence, not approaching, not hiding, waiting. Each one was shaped like a person, but made of absence, pure void. No detail, no texture, just the outline of what should be. And in the center of them stood one figure apart. It had a face, her own. It opened its mouth and Sarah's voice echoed out, speaking words she'd never said. "You've returned too early. The door was not for you." Her knees buckled. She tried to scream, but the sound dissolved before leaving her throat. The Sarah-faced figure continued. "Gate 0 is not a destination. It is a reflection, a fracture, a choice." "What choice?" she gasped. "To stay," it said, "or to carry them back." The shadows stirred, as if rustling in anticipation. "And if I choose neither?" she asked. "They will choose for you." A thunderous sound cracked across the sky, like a mirror shattering in slow motion. The light twisted, turning red and violet, bending into impossible angles. Sarah clutched her head as memories, not hers, flooded in. Images of strangers driving endless roads, of motel rooms filled with whispers, of dozens, hundreds of others who had also seen, who had also followed the path. She realized the shadow people weren't just watchers, they were remnants, the imprints of those who had come before and never returned the same, or at all. And now they were inside her. Sarah wasn't being haunted, she was becoming. Her feet moved involuntarily, stepping backward through the gate. When she crossed back into the real world, the sun was lower. Her car was coated in dust, and her reflection no longer mirrored her movements precisely. A half-second behind. Eyes that flickered. Sarah got in the car and drove. Not away. Back. She had made her choice. Or maybe it had made her. Because behind her, inside the trunk, inside her rearview mirror, inside her shadow, they were coming too. It's been 4 years since Sarah Whitmore vanished without a trace. Her car was found in a Walmart parking lot in Santa Fe, engine cold, keys still in the ignition. Inside were her notebooks, a half-drunk bottle of water, and a Polaroid photo face down on the passenger seat. Authorities opened a missing persons case. Flyers went up. Friends, family, strangers from the online travel community all searched, all speculated. But there was nothing. No witnesses, no camera footage, no signs of struggle. It was as if she had stepped out of her car and dissolved into air. The case might have gone cold, just another name on another list. But 2 weeks later, a second report came in. A man named Chris Templeton, a long-haul trucker from Arkansas, filed a statement after picking up a hitchhiker outside Flagstaff. A woman, late 20s, disoriented, didn't speak much. He said she kept looking in the side mirror, muttering under her breath, something like, "Don't let them pass, don't let them pass." He dropped her off at a diner near the border of New Mexico. She never paid for her meal, just walked into the bathroom and never walked out. Security footage shows her entering, never leaving. The staff searched the diner top to bottom. The door had no other exit, but she was gone. And then the stories began again. Drivers reporting faceless figures watching from under overpasses. Hikers hearing footsteps in places no feet had touched in decades. Whispered phrases through motel air vents, words like, "She brought them back." And now something else has begun to spread. Travelers all across the Southwest, people who don't know each other, people who have never spoken, are reporting the same thing. The knocking, always at night. 3 slow knocks, sometimes on windows, sometimes on the door, sometimes from inside the wall behind the bed. Those who open the door say they see nothing, but after that they never sleep right again. Some claim their reflections lag. Some say they see themselves sitting in their own back seats, only for a split second before the figure is gone. And some vanish entirely, like Sarah, like others before her. You may be wondering if this is a legend, a ghost story for thrill-seeking road trippers. But let me ask you something. Have you ever felt eyes on you in an empty room? Seen movement in a mirror that didn't match your own? Heard a knock when no one should be there? The shadow people aren't bound to a single place. They travel. They follow. Especially those who've heard the stories, who've imagined them too vividly, who've thought, just once, what if they're real? Because that's all it takes. Awareness is invitation. And now, you know. So tonight, when the lights are out and the silence starts to hum, and you feel something just beyond the reach of your senses, don't look into the mirror, don't check the window, and for God's sake, don't answer the knocking, because you might just realize they ride with you now.